far as I take it, so we'll take it over to the grinder now and tidy up some of those shapes. Now we can mark out the drill holes and a maker's mark and so forth. Now, I'll drill those holes first and then I'll come back and do the lightning holes after that. Yeah, now we're ready to have a grind of it and get the pre-heat treat bevels ground in. Well, this is the little jigs that I use to make sure I get all the angles right. So we'll grind this this blade now. Well, you can see that with it done like that, that leaves me quite a good thickness in the centre, and because this is stainless, it'll be foil wrapped and heat treated and plate quenched, so this gives me enough solid steel left to make sure the plate quench is going to keep it straight. And because it's being ground at that angle there, when you come to doing this this nose point here, the angle shortens up, so you've got a stronger tip than you would have if it was carried on and ground at that angle there. So we'll get those all ready for foil wrapping now. bit of talc stops it sticking to the stainless. Right, so I'll go ahead and do those other few of that and have it ready for heat treating. So we've got everything laid out to get these heat treated. We've got the rest of the blanks sitting on the bench. We've got the dual with the liquid nitro, and over there is the plate quench with the bucket of water to cool the plates down. So we're just about ready to take this one out now. That's the timer. These are good to get out one at a time, but that's the only way to do it, really. So when they come up to room temperature a little bit, I'll put them in the oven up there at 350, and they'll have 2 2-hour cycles at that. Alright, so these have been hardened, they've been cryo quenched and tempered twice, so it's time to do the finished grinds on these now. So we've got a nice sharp 120 grip belt on there, and we'll set them to it. Right, well that's a nice clean grind on that, and it's down to about 20 thou. We like it just a little bit thicker for this sort of edge, so we'll get some hand sanding on that now. Right, we'll get some of these blades cleaned up now. So this is them straight off the grinder, so we'll get a bit of hand sanding done. So I have my hand sanding block, and it's just got a piece of stainless on that side just to have a nice flat surface, and it allows you to use your palms rather than your fingers to hold your block and put pressure on it. Now, after cleaning that up a little bit shows me where the odd scratch is. They're not deep, but it's easy to take them out with these little stones. Ah, that's looking good. So we can go back to our poker now. So that's all we need to do with the catch paper. So we'll go to the 320 now. Now that's looking good. Now we can get a final run with the 600 and it'll be done. For that side anyway. I lift the back of the block just as I get to the other end. I can avoid the J hooks that are often a problem if you don't do that. So, yeah, you can see that's reasonably nice and clean there now. So we'll give that a tape off and then we can go on to the other side. And that'll stay taped like that now until the final sharpening, and that keeps it from being marked in the sharpening tube. So we can go ahead and do the other side now, and then we'll be on to the handles. This is the first pair all ready for handles. One's got the black micarta canvas and the other one's got the OD. So we'll get those set up and get some hin holes drilled and get them epoxied on. Well, I've got it set up with a couple of clamps, so I know that's not going to move from there. So the first thing is to drill the first hole. Put on the temporary bun. Right, so now I can scribe round there, mark out my the end of my handle there, and put it onto the other one and mark it out as well. Now that's two of the handle sets all ready to epoxy on, so we'll get some West systems mixed up and some pins organised, and we'll get those done. So they're all glued up and in the clamps for the night, so we'll come back to them tomorrow and start getting a bit of shaping and cleaning up done. So with them out of the clamps now, I can start getting some shape to these handles. So with the profiles done now, we've got the shaping lines drawn in, so we'll go and get that ground back to those lines. So you can see the little guide that I used to mark in the shape of these, and this allows me a uniformity from knife to knife when you've got more than one to do of the same pattern. So having those ground down to the lines now, it's time to put some radiuses on those, so we'll go and do that. With the radiusing of the handles done, it's now time to look at the texturing that we're going to do on them. So that's the two of them had the scallops and texturing done. So the next page now is the Kydex sheaths. So I'll have to have a play with that. So this is the wee press I made up to do the Kydex. It's just a couple of squares of the high density foam floor mats that you can get at any of the hardware shops. And a clamp to clamp it up, some thin leather gloves because this stuff gets reasonably hot, and the various pieces of Kydex that we need to do this project. So we'll get one of those in the oven now and start the process. Right, with that up to heat, and we've got this taped, and we've got a tape here so I know the depth that I have to go to. Set that aside for the 10 minutes it needs to cool right down, and then we can move on to the next step. Well, it's had its time to cool down now, so we can take it out. And we've got a nice fit, and that's up far enough that I can do the scoop and do the thumb push. So we look at getting some lines on there now to cut that too, and I find this little 3/8 rule is about right. will be about the finished line, but we'll cut it very proud of that, especially in this area here, so that we can work it down to a nice tight fit. So I'll go and cut that now. So the next page is to get this area here so that it will allow this part of the knife to go in. So with a little bit of judicious heating over this heat gun, we can bone that out and make a nice slide in fit, just about there. That'll about do that. And the next page is to get the thumb latch bent over. That will allow, when that's in there, that'll give you an area to push your thumb against. That's not quite set yet, and I'll probably shorten it up. But that gives you something to push against, so you're not pulling against the belt loop. It actually stays stationary, and you pull it out with your thumb like that. So when that cools down, we'll get a wee bit of shape to the end of that, and then it's on to looking at the wrap around here that the belt loop goes into. Right, well, this is the sheath wrap. So that around at the appropriate place. Get some pliers on there to pull it tight. And then now that'll pull that in nice and tight there, and we've got the spacer in between so that the belt loop can go in behind there. So we'll leave that sitting there now until that all cools down, and then we can get the belt loop organised. So we'll get that into the heater now and wait for that to come up to heat. Right, we'll have to be reasonably quick with this one because there's a fair bit to go on it. Right, well that should have the belt loop done. So again we'll have to wait for that to cool. But this other one should be cool by now. Right, and so it is, so we can trim that off and start drilling some holes. And I'll leave these spaces in there until I've done that. So we'll get that done. Okay, well I might have missed out a step. I've got all these holes drilled and the rivets in there. I've got the my Maker's Mark 3 spots marked out on either side, and that's ready for this belt loop now. It should be, and that's pretty good. We just got to run some shape around there. Contemplating putting a screw through here so it can be used either as a fixed loop or the loose loop, so it can be on and off the belt and still hold secure. So we'll work on that one as yet, but we'll get some shape on that. And now it's just a simple case of getting the holes drilled in there and everything screwed together. So we'll just put a wee bit of heat on that and just bend it back towards the knife just a fraction, and it should all be done. So I think we can call this rescue knife done now. I've done one in the black micarta and Kydex, and one in the OD green. The wraparound allows for changing it from a right-handed hold to a left-handed simply by undoing these screws, sliding this whole thing off, taking these through screws out and changing that over to that side, but then it becomes the left-handed sheath. So it's ambidextrous in that regard, and it's got a very good hold, and with the wee thumb pushed there just to give it some ease to get it out, so you're not pulling it against the belt. The same thing applies to this. It's a very secure hold, and for those who prefer, there's the leather sheath, so that it sits a little bit deeper into there, but has the same secure hold. So that's the rescue knife, and I'm sure that we can offer them at a reasonable rate for those who have this type of work in mind.